Welcome to Feminine Fortune. It is our first episode here today. Today I'll be sharing with you the purpose of this podcast, what you can expect, as well as my superhero origin story of where I came from, where I am now, why you should listen to me, why you should trust me, where I'm going, and what that all means for you as a woman who desires to create and live your version of the limitless life. So here's what I see. Here's how I see it. God gave you your dreams and your calling for a purpose and for a reason. It truly is not just there to mess with you and give you FOMO and make you feel bad. No, it's there because you're meant to pursue it. And I know this because I've experienced this myself, where I turned my pain into my purpose and my passion. And it's not just me. I've seen my clients experience this over and over too. So what is the purpose of this podcast? Let's just dive right in so you can say, yes, this is why I'm here. Okay. The purpose of this podcast is to help women who are in sales, who desire to sell more with less, meaning create equal, if not better results with less time, less effort, less money, and create the life and the freedom that they desire. Okay, so this podcast really is designed to make the biggest difference for women in real estate, entrepreneurs, those in insurance sales, car sales, software sales, network marketing, direct sales. I've helped women in all of these categories. The purpose of this podcast is to help you recession-proof yourself. So at the time of this recording, things are a little dicey in the world. Okay. A lot of people are really quite nervous and scared. So I don't know what time of season or year you're listening to this. Hopefully it lasts a really long time. And people are listening to it forever. But regardless, there's always going to be economic cycles, right? And it's very powerful to create a business and legacy for yourself that literally no matter what's happening in the macro economy, your micro economy is good. So in this particular season in the world that we're in right now, at this time, people are losing their jobs. Businesses are closing. People are scared. The world feels upside down, right? Like I said, the macro economy is declining. But no matter who you are, no matter what you're selling, no matter what business you're in, whatever your circumstances, I can tell you, believe me when I say, your micro economy does not have to be suffering. Okay, so I'll be sharing with you in this podcast both the practical tools as well as the mindset shifts to not only avoid the pitfalls that are related to recessionary times, but also to create your life and business to thrive at any time, which to me, the way that I talk about that is to become limitless in all the ways that matter to you. As you tune in to this podcast, my intention is that you will gain confidence in your ability to sell and thrive in any environment. You'll experience new inspiration around selling and generating financial freedom. You'll experience excitement about a new way to sell that feels better, that feels authentic, and actually ultimately delivers even better results than anything you've done before. So like I said, so you can sell more with less. My intention is that you'll have clarity about who you serve, what you sell, how you sell it, and also having clarity, just bigger picture on creating the life that you love. You'll have confidence to overcome any objection with grace. You'll have clarity on the difference between the masculine and the feminine way to sell. Okay. And if you implement what I share with you in this podcast on each episode, you will increase. If you're diligent, you will increase your sales. You will accelerate your financial goals and your success. Okay. So let me share a little bit more about myself, like why this even matters to me, why I've devoted my entire life to helping women learn to sell the feminine way and be limitless. So here's what's funny. I never in 1,000 years expected to be somebody who loved sales, much less actually teaches it. I grew up in the Midwest, riding horses, painting, and just generally being a very introverted and sensitive kid. And sales and business were the absolute last thing in my world of interest. And this is totally not to make being introverted and sensitive a bad thing. I think this is just hopefully an inspiring moment and a word for somebody who also has a story and a belief like I did that I can't have success. I can't focus on business and sales. That's just not my zone of genius that I get to focus on in life because I'm introverted and sensitive and too empathic. But I say this because I hear this a lot. That's why I'm saying this. No, anybody can have success. Anybody can no matter what your personality style is, Myers-Briggs, whatever it is for you, anybody can have success. It's just a matter of making it authentic for you. And I'm living proof of this. My dad was actually in sales, so I was exposed to it my whole life. And he did well. However, I made up all kinds of things about sales and about business from having watched him. And as somebody who was more introverted and sensitive and artistic and creative, I made up all kinds of things. So I saw him go to work and come home in a suit with a briefcase. There's all this paperwork. He seemed kind of stressed out sometimes. And I just made up that that is not my vision of how I want to live my life every single day. I was I want to do anything else but that. I'll tell you what, I thought I was going to be a zookeeper. I literally was a zookeeper for a short period of time at the St. Louis Zoo in the Primate House. Yes, that was a thing. I spent time, and I'll tell you more about my story, but just to paint a picture of how unlikely it is that I ended up here teaching sales and having success with it. I sold paintings as a professional artist. I did choreography and was hired as a choreographer in Asia. I've done all kinds of things other than sales. And here I am. Here I ended up, and I love it, and I have success with it. It's just so funny because I never connected the dots that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. There's one example of a situation that I should have gotten a clue from it, which is when I was in college, I worked at a store called Teavana. It's not is it a thing? I don't know if it's a thing. You can write to my Instagram DMs and let me know hey, I know there's a Teavana, but I don't think it's a thing anymore. But anyway, it was a thing. It was privately owned when I was in college, and it's since was bought out by Starbucks, and it just kind of went downhill from there. But when I was working for them, it was privately owned. There were I think 80 locations. And I just loved tea. I mean, to me, this might sound silly to you, but this is if you're passionate about something, you'll know what I mean. Tea was the answer to every problem in the whole world. You had a breakup, let's sit down and have some tea. Oh, you have a cold? Let me give you some tea. Oh, you need to have energy and focus, and so you can study and work hard, have some tea. Oh, you need to relax, have some tea. Tea was the answer to everything. And so when I was working at Teavana and somebody would come into the store, it was so easy for me to sell every range of product from the lower cost tea to the high end tea makers and cast iron pots. And I was just so passionate about all of it. And in college, I was the second highest seller in Teavana in the country. And I didn't focus on it or make anything up about it. Oh, I'm really good at sales. I didn't make it mean that because I just thought, when somebody is passionate about something, obviously it's easy to talk about it. And maybe you can relate with that. Maybe there's a restaurant that you love by you. And whenever somebody comes in town to visit, you're oh my gosh, we have to go to this restaurant. You have to try it. We're going to go to this Italian restaurant. You have to get the spaghetti. OMG, it's the best ever. You're going to die. Or maybe it's there's a certain movie that you saw recently and you're we have to go see this movie. You are going to love it. It's so good. You might not realize it, but when you have that kind of enthusiasm and passion about something, and you have this feeling of someone I care about must have this experience because it's so awesome. Literally, that is sales. That is enrollment. That is influence. That is sales. And it didn't I didn't connect the dots even then that I was passionate about sales, even though I was. So let that be an aha moment for you, even right now. If there's something that you're passionate about, if there's something that you're like, OMG, people must experience this, you might be good at sales and you don't realize it. How cool is that? So when I graduated from college, I chose the traditional route. Even though I did not want to, I kind of felt like peer pressured to go that route. So I moved to New York City. I got a great job, great in quotes, because like great to everybody else. But to me, it was like, oh, this is the worst. I like felt like I couldn't be myself. I felt like I was bad at it. I felt like, it was just like, really, like, this is what I'm doing with my life. Like, I don't feel like I'm positively contributing to anyone or anything. And I'm the type of person who really likes to feel useful and feel like I'm making a positive contribution. And I did not feel like that in that job. So I was unhappy. I was living in New York City, but it was almost like it didn't matter because on the weekends I was so tired from like such an inauthentic, exhausting job where I worked from like 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night that on weekends I just like stayed in and watched TED Talks. That was like that was how I recuperated. So it wasn't even like I was like really living in New York City and having that experience. So when the recession hit in like the 2007, 2008 timeframe, and I was let go, I was not that sad. I was actually secretly very happy. And I was like, this is such, and like, even before I understood like leadership distinctions and transformation, even then I was like, it was clear to me that like, wow, this is absolutely an obstacle into an opportunity moment. So it's kind of interesting because like we're in another cycle right now economically of the recession is here. People are losing their jobs. People are getting upset. And if you're listening to this and you are somebody who's lost your job, like let's allow you to be honest with you for a second. Maybe honestly, even though it's like, that paycheck is gone, is there any part of you that like kind of hated that job? Kind of like how, like the paycheck is gone, but thank God, because I hated that job. Like this is like, I probably wouldn't have quit on my own. So like the golden handcuff situation, like this is too good for me to quit on my own, but I hate it. Like you getting let go from that job, was it secretly a blessing though? Was it secretly like, it feels like it happened to you, but it really was happening for you? And like, actually, if you're honest with yourself, you're kind of grateful right now. I say this because again, at the time of this podcast recording, this episode, we are in a recession. It's difficult times. People are scared. But like energy is everything. And I'll talk more about that at some point later. And the way that you, like the attitude that you have about your situation, if you're willing to be in the world, because it is like a different world, be in the world of this is happening for me, not to me, you will actually create a different outcome for yourself. So I was in the world of this is happening for me, not to me. And it didn't take much for me to be in that world because I was really just that unhappy with the job. So where I took that is I took my unemployment money and I decided that I was going to pursue my dream, which at the time was to become a marine mammal biologist. And again, I know that sounds so left field, so random, but it was what I really thought I wanted to do at the time. Because again, remember, I'm impact motivated, I'm contribution driven, and I felt like, people are destroying the oceans, the, marine life. I mean, across the globe, biodiversity is going down, but in the oceans, that was an area that I cared about. And I just have always loved dolphins. I've always felt a connection with them. And I decided I was going to regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't at least try to pursue a career in marine mammal biology. The reason I didn't pursue it immediately up until that point is because I had limiting beliefs. It was like, oh, it's a male dominated field. Oh, I don't have enough science background. Oh, it's too competitive. Oh, I'll never make it. But something happens in you when you start to get connected with the fear of regret. And I got really connected for whatever reason at that time to the fear of regret. And I decided I'd rather go for it and potentially fail. Like my attitude really, to be honest with you, my attitude was, I will probably fail at this, but at least I can say I went for it. So I went for it. Fast forward, a long story short, 6 months later, I received a full scholarship to Hong Kong University to get my graduate degree in marine mammal biology. So that was pretty cool. While I was there, I met someone amazing. Well, I met a lot of amazing people, but while I was there, I met someone who completely changed my thinking around business, money, entrepreneurship, and what it means to be a successful woman. And that person was somebody who had her own successful business, and she was beautiful and she was feminine and she wore the most beautiful, vintage, dresses, and it was just so playful and whimsical, and had a freaking global multi-million-dollar fashion brand. I'm like, wait, this is a thing? You can be authentic and feminine and, whimsical and joyful and completely successful all at the same time. And she contribution minded, she had a charity that she created in her home country of South Africa to contribute to children and their education. Oh my gosh, this is a paradigm shift. So I did finish my degree. I did finish all of that. And I realized in terms of impact, 'cause again, my motivation is impact. I could see myself having a bigger impact doing what she did, my version of that as an entrepreneur, than going into academia, because academia meant I realized you don't learn things until you do them sometimes, right? So academia was oh, I'm going to do my research. I'm going to do my dissertation. Literally 2 people are going to read my paper, maybe 3, maybe 5 if it gets published somewhere. And that's impact. That's not impact, not for me. I mean, maybe for other people, and maybe there's other people who their calling really is to make such a beautiful difference in the way they do with academia. And they are so where they should be. And it just was not the calling for me. It just that was not my calling. That wasn't my calling. I really saw how I could make my version of my impact through entrepreneurship. And so after I graduated and completed my degree in excellence, I took an immediate pivot into my version of impact, which was entrepreneurship, which was coaching, which was helping people, at the time, I mean, I didn't use the words limitless life at the time. That's language I use now. But at the time, really, it was stepping into their version of limitless in their relationships, in their business, in their careers, in their body. It was kind of general life coaching. And then as I did really well with that, people were like, how are you doing this? And it kind of evolved into business coaching. And then I kind of evolved into, I'm the go-to person for feminine sales. And that's how it evolved, right? So let me just tell you about that transition between that more traditional path of academia and then transitioning into entrepreneurship. I want to share this with you because this really gets down to one of the main reasons why I'm even doing this podcast. Deciding to become an entrepreneur came with a cost for me. Nobody understood my choice. They thought I was crazy. I received feedback who are you to be a coach? I mean, these are the things that people think inside their head. And this is actually the things that people said to me. Who are you to be a coach? Your life is a mess. These are the things people said to me. It was devastating. It was devastating. And next thing I moved back to the States for a guy from Hong Kong. I was living in Hong Kong for years, moved back to the States for a guy. He broke up with me when he picked me up from the airport. So my boyfriend at the time, my family, cut off, literally cut off. Nobody understood me. I lost a bunch of friends. They didn't get it. Do you know what got me through? What got me through was listening to podcasts. So all those years ago, I started listening to podcasts, and it was like having a friend in the living room with me. I was all alone, physically speaking, but as long as I had my podcast, I was okay. I woke up and listened to my podcast. I brushed my teeth and listened to my podcast. I was getting ready for bed and I listened to my podcast, and it got me through. It got me through. It was like my life fuel. I felt very alone, very misunderstood, very scared. I had no evidence that any of this was going to work. I had no evidence that any of it was going to turn into anything. By the grace of God, I kept going anyway. I kept believing in myself anyway. I wasn't willing to give up. I kept going. And listening to podcasts was what helped me keep going. So I want to pay it forward and be somebody who offers encouragement and support and inspiration and life fuel for you. So why should you trust me? Well, I'm celebrating my 10th year in business this year. Yay. I have made millions over the years, and I've helped others increase their revenue by 6 million. I've been able to design my life to be how I love it to be. I operate my business in the feminine way, which you'll learn more about what that means in the coming podcasts. I've been able to donate and contribute. I've donated over $30,000 to Operation Underground Railroad, which fights sex trafficking. I work about 3 weeks out of the month. I've donated thousands of dollars to ISA Foundation, which helps feed people, like feed hungry. I take my birthday month off, which is August. I take the month of August off. I've healed my family relationships. So, like all that turmoil I had all those years ago where like my family stopped talking to me and everyone stopped believing in me. Like I've healed all of those relationships. It's come full circle. In fact, sometimes they're the ones that come to me for advice now. I have no hard feelings, all forgiveness, all water under the bridge. And I'm so grateful to, have my relationships be better than they ever were before. I have 4 best friends. So I know some people, they would just like die to have one best friend. And I'm blessed enough to have 4 best friends. I really can't choose which one's like truly 4 best friends. I walk the Limitless Lady way, and you'll learn more about what that means soon. Basically, it means that life opens up for me and God pours the most amazing miracles and blessings into my lap, pressed down, shaken up, and flowing over. And it's not because I'm lucky. It's not because I was born into any kind of certain environment. It's because I invested the time and energy and money in myself and my growth. And I've been willing to make mistakes. I've been willing to fail, and I have failed, and I've learned the hard way. And look, I'm going to share everything with you here in this podcast that I've learned along that way, so you can walk your version of the Limitless Lady path. So I really do believe that God gave you your dreams and your calling for a purpose and for a reason. And it is not to mess with you. It is not to give you FOMO of like, I'm living this life over here, but I'd rather be living this life over there. No, it's for a reason, and you're meant to follow it. And I know this because I've experienced it. I know this because I've seen it with my clients, and I've seen their transformation. I've turned my pain into my purpose and into my passion. And I know you can too. So my intention for this episode is that you start to let yourself dream. The only reason I'm sitting here and not sitting in some corporate office somewhere is because I gave myself permission to dream. And this is your permission to start dreaming. Or if you already feel like you're living your dream, to give yourself permission to actually dream even bigger. Like a dream that scares the you-know-what out of you. So if you know someone who could use a little pick-me-up today, who also is on the same path as you, who knows that if you're not growing, you're dying, that there's always more for you, there's always more to contribute, and you have a friend who feels the exact same way, I hope you send them this episode and say, hey, I found this awesome podcast. I'm so excited to go on this feminine fortune journey, and you got to come with me. And if this episode made a difference for you, I do ask that you subscribe. It does make such a difference, and I appreciate you for it. Make sure to go follow me on the Instagrams and the Facebooks, and, get all the behind the scenes of my life, which I share there, what we got going on. And I will see you in the next episode of Feminine Fortune.